Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast. We bring you stories every day. Every day we bring you stories. I was just thinking of that song by LMFAO, Every Day I'm Shuffling, and I was like trying to figure out how I could include that into the title, but I didn't. Anyways, hello everyone. I am, of course, Levi, your host.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we are here to talk about the Nebula of Nottingham, which is our latest creation. The recap, if you can't understand it by the name, is yes, it was Robin Hood in space. Reed had fiction by another name, and he chose Robin Hood. So that was kind of cool. I thought that was kind of cool. We had an interesting, some interesting fighting styles. We had some interesting magic systems. We had some interesting artifacts. But most importantly, what's most important at the end of the day is not what you, our listener, thinks of the stories, but what my fellow co-hosts think of the stories. Do you guys have your ratings? We like to rate them 1 through 10. We just started it like a couple of stories ago, but so far it's going okay. Reed, what do you rate this one?
6.
6. So it's 1 to 10,000. So that's a pretty low score.
Yeah, I think that, well, I'm a little hard on us. I liked it. There's a lot of good things in this story. I still have a feeling like what I want to see to get up there to 8s and 9s.
Yeah.
I want to see where we're filling in more storytelling rather than kind of describing what the story would be if we were telling it. Does that make any sense to you?
I think so.
Yeah.
So less storyboarding and more story writing.
Yeah. Just have throw in some telling of like this interaction takes place as part of the thing, and then it starts falling together. I'm not pointing fingers here. This is something that I am guilty of. But in my mind, I'm not ready to jump up to high scores, even though we got a really great story going. I'm not ready to jump up to high scores till we kind of make it that kind of more engaging. That's the thing.
Yeah. That's really interesting. The way I think as you were talking about that, I'm improvising what I'm saying right now. This is not pre-planned, but maybe we should include something where if someone has an interesting idea about how something should go, we should ask them, what would that look like? And then they sort of enter in and kind of that's one of the problems. Like you can improvise ideas, but it's kind of difficult to improvise meaningful storytelling.
Yeah.
But with the fighting style, what would that look like? Well, it would look like, kind of like a tomato, how the one part is like red and the other part is green. Sorry.
Yeah. We'll have to think about that, Reed. I think that's a really good point, though, because ultimately this is supposed to be a storytelling podcast. I've kind of been living a lie. It's not really a storytelling podcast. It's just a story idea podcast. I gotta cancel all the previous hundreds of episodes.
What episode would this come down to?
Let me check. I believe I don't remember.
300 and some, right?
Easily. I think we're close to 365.
So we're coming up on 7 years.
We're close to being able to watch an entire episode, one episode a day, for a whole year.
That's great.
Yeah, we are currently. Oh my God, to ask me that question, and now the bug is stuck in my brain. 328. This will be 329. Episode 329 of Wait, It Gets Better. Maybe I should start saying the episode numbers that'd be a cool thing.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's a good score, Reed. I totally agree with you when it comes to the storytelling parts of it. And I love the Robin Hood story so much. And I feel like in some ways we did some good justice to it. But then like the Robin Hood story is such a complex question of what people do, like good versus evil, the downtrodden versus those in power, and then add into it the complexity of like Robin of Locksley, his family, and then add into it like the Ivanhoe story, which kind of brings in a whole nother part of Richard the Lionhearted being in captivity, because don't they arrange the ransom in Ivanhoe,
right?
So like that aspect of King Richard being ransomed takes place in Ivanhoe.
Yeah.
But anyways, my score is probably about you said 6, Reed?
Yeah.
Mine's probably about a 5.5, maybe a 5. Kind of for the same similar reasons. We did retire the story element of Fiction by Another Name after this episode, after this story. Just realizing that it was a little bit untenable. It locked us in a little bit, and I don't think we're good enough. I don't think I'm a good enough storyteller to take a previous story and masterfully rework it. Better to let my subconscious do that, having read a lot of other stories,
right,
than trying to consciously rework it. I just
yeah.
It suffered because of I was constantly looking back at my story of Robin Hood timeline, trying to be like, okay, how do I make this thing match up? And it didn't rise. It didn't happen easily.
The other thing that I ran into is having drawn this story element is I realized it kind of if you come up, with a story that I really like and neither of you have read it or whatever, it can't be too obscure, otherwise it's just lost on everybody. Right. And it might be fun for me if I'm real familiar with the story, but so I said, well, we've done like what was the last one we did that was a very obvious?
I think the only other one we did was The Hobbit.
Yeah.
And Ivanhoe, I think.
I think we did an Ivanhoe. Did we do an Ivanhoe back in the day?
We did.
I think we might have.
I think it was one of the first Fiction by Another Names we did. And I think it's been, as from my memory, 3 of them that we've done: Ivanhoe, The Hobbit, and now Robin Hood.
Well,
what's
this? Now we got to do another one for the Arthurian legends.
Yeah. I love the story of Robin Hood, though, man.
Yeah. Part of it is that there's a lot of different ideas. There's a lot of different stories of Robin Hood. Mm-hmm. It's like there's only one The Hobbit, but there's some stories where Robin Hood dies. He gets a mortal wound and he dies. There's some where he marries Maid Marian and lives happily ever after. There's some where Richard comes back. There's some where Richard doesn't come back. There's some where he's waylaid. There's some where he's captured. It's like it's a mythos. It's a mythology, and so it's not a concrete story. If we went by, what we should have done maybe is chosen which Robin Hood to go by: the Russell Crowe Robin Hood, the Disney Robin Hood, whatever. And then we could have said, okay, this is what we're gonna go by. But that's why it got kind of a 5 from me. There was certain aspects of it that I really liked. One of the things I really liked was the ships were the sort of personification of the people. So even though Little John was real, what was truest about Little John was that it was a ship that provided the same type of actions that Little John did, because it's in space. Same thing with Robin Hood, same thing with Tucker, the Friar Tuck character. These people, it was I like it because it was different enough. It wasn't just this guy's the analog to Little John. It was this whole ship provides the same sort of function. So how about you, Seth? What's your score?
So I was just like you guys, debating putting it between a 5 and a 6. I'll go with a 6. Because I think as far as I think it worked well enough with the Fiction by Another Name.
Right.
I think I'd agree with like what Reed said, in the general idea of the storytelling aspect, and like what you said is maybe trying to turn more of what we're saying into this is how this part would play out, instead of just plot lining ideas. There would be something to keep in mind. I would say one of my biggest critiques with it, and it's not, I guess it's not trying to downplay the genre itself. I think we have a lot of stories that are pretty cool and work well in space, but oddly enough, all of the Fiction by Another Name was like, here's this, but in space. I don't know.
Yeah.
Are you guys familiar with, I don't know if you guys are you know what it is, Levi, the Strong Bad stuff, Homestar Runner?
Yeah.
In that they have, it just kind of popped into head because I've got a little sticker for the actual thing sitting in front of me. And they have like a pretend band, because if anyone's not familiar with it, it was like a internet cartoon before YouTube was a thing. But anyway, so in the world of Homestar Runner and Strong Bad, they have kind of like a rock band that's in their world called Limousine, and to kind of poke fun at, I think like the Beatles did like a TV show of the Beatles. No, that was the Monkees. I think that's how it started. But anyways, this band has, in their universe of things, has a TV show about themselves. And to mix it up, it's, they kind of do their little rock thing, and their producer comes in. It's like, I've got bad news, boys. We're in space. But anyways, and so that's a little bit of a tangent, but that kind of came to mind with that thought.
Right.
Is that, for a fiction by another name, like I think it would be a great idea. I'd love to see a lot more thought put into it that hopefully has more of a intricate, like, I don't know, plot line, not, I don't know, plot line, but intricate idea behind it, rather than just going to space as the option.
Yeah, I hear you.
Just that was kind of my thought on it. I think it did well. I think the concepts and the story of it worked well with that, but as like a future reference for imagining a story by another name.
Yeah. What I kind of think would be good, because we have unintentionally done fiction by another name a couple of times, where we've talked about the plot lines of a story, talked about it, and then said, wait a second, this is basically this story.
I know The Edge. There was one story where I went along and you called me out, Seth. Well, that sounds like The Edge with was it not Richard Gere?
It's, Alec Baldwin
and Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I realized it was tucked back there in my subconscious that I was not even when you called me out, and I said, I'm so busted.
Well, that's okay. I'm saying I think it's better that we stumble upon fiction by another name accidentally, rather than trying to force it. Which is what I was trying to say earlier. It's like, it's much better to just say, we're going to come up with our own ideas. And if at the end, in one of these review episodes, someone says, guys, we did fiction by another name. We did Phantom of the Opera, except in space, or whatever. Phantom of the Opera, except the Western.
Yeah.
We would be like, oh my gosh, isn't that crazy how that happened? Rather than trying to force the issue. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
The one little detail that I enjoyed, and I didn't realize it until I'd already started writing this down, is I had unique artifact, and I called it the cradle. And this was like a device. And I realized I was picturing in my mind the thing that they used, Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray, they used in Ghostbusters to contain these spirits. They had their little that looked like an Electrolux vacuum cleaner strapped to their back with the hose, and then they'd set out this electromagnetic pulse, and then they would capture these ghosts or spirits or demons or whatever,
and use the spirit traps.
And then he put it into a trap, and it was held there in like a nuclear containment field or something. And then that idiot bureaucrat comes by and turns off their power and lets it loose. I mean, but anyway, that was the picture in my mind. So I totally ripped off from Ghostbusters.
No, that's good. My vision was kind of like a glass rectangular 3-dimensional rectangle, right? That you look into it, and it's like you can't look through it, but it's like all refracted surfaces, and it's like kind of glowing. And it's just been used. It's just like a giant battery. It's just been collecting and collecting and collecting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I thought that the magic system was very cool. I might use something like that for a D&D game sometime in the future as like a really simple magic system. It's like you produce X amount of ichor. Your body is burning X amount of ichor an hour, and you can use whatever's left over to speed yourself up or lift something, whatever. And like the more you use it, the more the kind of channel strengthens and grows. And so the more you get, it'd be a really very simple magic system, and then use too much, you turn to stone.
Yeah. There was another factor in this, and it has to do with the good guys versus the bad guys motif of Robin Hood, where the good guys actually become outlaws because they are, they're outside the quote unquote law, but it's in a place where the law has become corrupted,
Right.
And then this is a thing that has struck me also. And, because of the revisionist history that paints anything to do with Western civilization as bad, white supremacist, and exploitive. is the whole notion of holding, like you're holding land, for example. Be fruitful and multiply, go forth and have dominion over the earth. It's the idea that a man can come to a stretch of wilderness and turn it into a garden. Man can come to a place where he can plant hedges and put up a watchtower and grow his vines,
Right.
and
trim the hedges of the many small villages.
Yeah, but the point being is that these terrible white supremacists came to America and stole the land. I've got homesteaders in my 2 generations and 3 generations back in my lineage, people who came to the Midwest from Scandinavia and took advantage of the homestead laws, where they went and built a home and claimed a quarter of land, and they planted crops and they milked some cows and they raised a bunch of kids, and nobody got rich, but people got educated and nobody went hungry. And
I'm confused. Can you bring this back around to Robin Hood?
Yeah, because Robin Hood goes off. He's drafted, right? He's doing his compulsory service for the powers that be, and his family had been part of a settlement family that had gone out, and they had basically taken a chunk of rock out there in the universe, and they had built something, and it was theirs, and they profited from it, but they contributed to the prosperity of the collective of civilization. And then when he's gone, their slimy characters take advantage of the fact that there isn't a shepherd for the sheepfold, and come in and plunder and steal and take advantage, and it sets up the quote unquote law against the lawbreaker, but flipping the script, that it was the lawbreaker that was following the law, and it was the quote unquote people in power that were the lawless ones, stealing from the industry and ingenuity of someone else's effort.
It's kind of a difficult thing when you look at the law of the land, and you have to figure out, okay, so how it works, in my estimation, is that he who has the biggest gun, the biggest sword, the biggest stick gets to decide what's right and wrong in any given place, right?
Yeah.
He gets to decide what is morally acceptable. So if that means you're in America, then the federal government of America gets to decide ultimately what is right and wrong in America, which can be difficult when someone's religious or moral compass says no, because you have to sort of abide inside of a place. America is a poor example because America, was built on the idea of freedom and opportunity. So even if you disagreed, you could still live in peace. But think of a different place like communist Russia or communist China or, North Korea, or dictatorships in South America, or, Nazi Germany, or lots of places where your moral stance was against the state.
Yeah.
And so then you take into heart like the idea of might makes right, and then you have to sort of say, well, who is the ultimate might? I mean, for me, it's easy because God is the ultimate might, so he dictates what is ultimately right.
Yes.
Right? So I can go into a communist country, I can go into a dictatorship, I can go into a parliamentarian country, I can go into a democratic republic, a constitutional republic, I can go into the high seas where there is no government, and always I have a moral compass pointing me towards what is right, protecting the innocent, upholding truth, the value of life, the value of children, the value of honor,
yes,
the virtues. And so that I think is a bit what you were talking about. Like, this guy came back, I don't remember his name, AJ?
AJ Jones.
He came back, and all of a sudden his moral compass was askew of the rest of the world, of the rest of his surrounding area. So he became a quote unquote outlaw.
Yeah.
But did he really? It's like, whose law was he abiding by? He was abiding by natural law.
Yeah.
By nature, and nature's God.
Yeah, like I think of the verse, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. And he was saying this to people who had been quote unquote righteous in their behavior. Didn't we do this righteous thing in your name? Didn't we do this righteous thing in your name? Depart from me. I never knew you, you workers of lawlessness.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing that everyone has to make that decision every day. Just like the founding fathers signed the Declaration of Independence and then the Constitution was ratified, every person has to decide what their moral code is and why they believe what they believe, and see if they can sign the Declaration of Independence. If they live in the United States of America, they have to read the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And in my opinion, they should print it out and they should sign it. They should see if they can put their name behind it and say, I will sacrifice my, what did they? My
lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Can I put myself behind this?
Yeah.
And if you can't, then you have to figure out how to live at peace in a foreign world.
Well, in the military, when you join the military, you swear an oath to uphold the Constitution. When you are elected to public office, you put your hand usually on a Bible and swear to uphold the Constitution. It's like we're assuming that our leaders are signed on to it,
Right.
And I agree with you. I think, what if we extended, I want to buy a house. Well, to own property, you have to swear to uphold the Constitution, the law of the land. I think that's an interesting thought.
Yeah. Like, all I'm saying is people need to, because if any of our listeners here who haven't already turned us off because we're talking about things that are like politics adjacent.
Yeah.
If you can't do that for whatever country you live in, if you can't do that, if you can't articulate or figure out what a moral code is and what yours is specifically, then like it's really scary to think about. But these are the people who played their music louder so they couldn't hear the trains on the way to Auschwitz.
Yeah.
These are the people who couldn't quite decide that if opposing the law of the land, these are the people who let their Japanese neighbors be shipped off to internment camps in America.
Yeah.
These are the people who allowed things like that to happen. And so, it's always a fun idea. You think that you'd be Robin Hood, but like, you need to know what you believe. Oh my gosh, this is like turned into like a much deeper episode than I meant. I'm sorry, guys.
I'm reading,
but like this is the absolute basis of the story of Robin Hood. Is that a person trained by his family, hardened by war, came back and knew exactly what he believed and refused to bend over and became an outlaw because of it.
Yeah, I'm reading a book called Cold Mountain, which is a relatively new piece of fiction, but it's a story, historical fiction based in toward the end of the Civil War in the South. And they have a character. It just makes me smile because he has written into the script, so to speak, a wise old woman character. And she's so great. He says, what are you guys all, this guy's on his way home, after having been wounded, fighting for the Confederacy. He says, what were you all fighting for? What? For the big man that's got the big plantation down in the good bottomland? This was up in the hills, up at Cold Mountain.
Yeah.
To keep slaves, and she used a less delicate term. She says, my experience, all holding slaves does is makes the rich people proud and ugly and makes the poor people mean. I thought, what an interesting expose of a slave holding culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, I've been going off. Seth, what do you got to say?
Not much.
Perfect. Any other interesting elements from this story that you guys want to talk about? Anything you felt like was a flash in the pan genius? I'll say it again. My magic system was amazing.
Absolutely.
I oftentimes will think of story elements in terms of how could this be part of a D&D game. That's like a big way that I have designed things and done things. And maybe that's one of the reasons why I don't do a lot of long form planning, is because I'm kind of an off the cuff kind of DM, and that's kind of my own fault. So anyways, any other cool ideas you guys have before we wrap this up?
Oh, I think it's good.
All right. I am going to draw our elements for next week. How does that sound? Does that sound fine to everybody?
Good for me.
I guess so.
Seth, can you give me a number between 1 and 11?
3.
All right. Reed, do you have something based on a book you're reading? I imagine it'll be the one that you just brought up to us. Okay. Reed, number 1 through 10.
2.
All right. Seth, you have government type. Wait, no, I would have government type because I have to choose for Seth. Okay, I have government type. Oh, perfect. I've been thinking about a government type for like weeks. It's going to be a great government type. Seth, you have Pantheon. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wait It Gets Better. If you want to hear more, we have so many episodes. If you want to hear less, send me an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com, and I will send you nothing if you want to hear less.
Great.
Message us on Twitter at @GetsBetterCast if you want to ask us questions, inquire about our stories. If you have any cool ideas, if you want to use any of our stories in your story, I'm totally game for that. And until next time, I would say just wait. It gets better.